I start with you. What did you think about what Harbaugh said there?
Well, I'll start by saying it's pretty unusual to hear an NFL coach be that critical publicly. I think it speaks to the severity of the situation, and also, as you said, Laura, to a sentiment that a lot of us felt not just last night, but on Sunday, watching Tua display the symptoms that we have been told are associated with concussions, the staggering, grabbing his head, and then go back into the game. In retrospect, I regret not being more skeptical on Monday when we talked about it, especially because even if the investigation happens and they find that the Dolphins followed all of the rules and protocols, that doesn't mean Tua wasn't failed. As Stefania laid out, these tests are not perfect. It's not a binary yes or no. And at a certain point, common sense has to prevail, especially on a short week like this. So my feeling is, even if the rules were followed, the rules need to be stronger, because what we've seen this week, both Sunday and Thursday, cannot happen again.
It's crazy to hear John Harbaugh say he never saw anything like that, because he was the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens in 2009 AFC Championship when I hit Willis McGahee. I was on the ground. Willis McGahee's hands were much like the posture of Tua Tagovailoa last night. Willis McGahee's face mask was taken off of his helmet. He was put on a cart and he was carted off. And so to have a coach who was actually there for that play, right, and for that moment in time to say what he said about Tua Tagovailoa lets you know the outside perception of what we got to see, lets you know the severity of it. And later on in my career, after I'd suffered some concussions, I can remember weeks on concussion protocol when I wasn't cleared until Friday. And we're talking about a game on Thursday after Tua, whether it was his back, whether he was cleared. Obviously, he was cleared. No matter what you saw, we all saw what it looked like when he stumbled toward the line. And there's a clip circulating of the pivot of when we had on Mike Tomlin. And I remember that week when I was trying to go back to Denver and play, and I'd assembled all of these doctors, and my wife is sitting next to me, and we're having all of these conversations, why it's okay for me to go to Denver. And he said to me probably about 5 minutes through, he was like, "Shut up, you're not playing. If you were my son, you wouldn't be doing it." And now we've learned so much more about CTE, so much more about concussions and head injuries, and that we do understand there are independent arbitrators or doctors that make the decision to put these guys on the field. I think we're going to have to take the next step, which is going to be common sense. And part of common sense is going to have to be empathy. Part of common sense is going to have to be us understanding that one game or two games isn't worth the health for the rest of some of these players' lives. And don't get me wrong, I am all for players wanting to play. He should want to play. He should want to be out there, because that's exactly what I would do, and that's exactly what I'd want my quarterback, a friend, or any player that believes they want to win a championship with me to do. That's why we need people to stop us from doing it. And what we saw with Tua Tagovailoa is on us. It's on the Miami Dolphins. It's on the doctors that had to see him back to the field, because we should have been more outraged Monday. I shouldn't have made jokes about his back. I should have said, you know what? I know what that looks like. I know what it is. And as somebody who's had 2 concussions in 3 weeks, I know what it feels like when you get the second one. So for Tua Tagovailoa and his health and his family, I pray that they take the time to make sure that he is all cleared before stepping out on the field.
Yeah, I think that's the point that you and Mina just made, RC, common sense. And listen, this whole narrative about don't be speculative, you ain't a doctor. I know what the hell I saw. I saw him shaking his head. I saw him almost stumble and fall. And to me, that's a sign not to go back in a football game. I don't care what the test said. I don't care if he cleared concussion protocol. What we saw after he got hit Sunday in the Buffalo Bills game should have eliminated Tua from going back into the football game, and it should have eliminated him 4 or 5 days later. I don't need to be a doctor to see that, because if I saw my son get hit and shake his head and almost fall down, not because of his back, he would not have played 4 days later. So I'm glad y'all said that. And we can continue to talk about what the doctors are and what the investigation is going to show.
Yes.
The 3 of you sitting up here, Dan Orlovsky, anybody on this show, if you fall when we on the road or we remote working a show and you are dazed and you can't come to, and I see you struggling, you will not do the show. You just won't do it. So I get what we talk about with protocol. And Stephania is so poignant in giving us that type of information and the things that need to transpire in order to have these guys cleared or further learn information. I know concussions are hard to diagnose. I know it's not hard to diagnose when he fell and shook his head and almost fell again. That wasn't hard to diagnose because it was on national TV for everybody to see. That's where I'm at with it. And to y'all point, man, we just have to not be desensitized to when we see something like that happen and just take the word of a team or take the word of somebody that's talking about it and at least call attention to it. So just like you both just did, which is in the lane of respect, I take responsibility also because we are in the media and we are on the show that talks about the NFL and our job 5 days a week. And we should have called this to a head a little bit more than we did last week.
Yeah.
Guys, there was something that Mike McDaniel said in his press conference today that really stuck out to me about Tua Tagovailoa saying, I really just hope I don't miss this game and that game. And I think it's a really good and important piece of information in looking at the true happenings of all this. The context, the situation for Tua is important. He feels he needs to prove something to his team, and to RC's point and what all of you have said here today, that's where people, if at all possible, and when common sense should be paramount, should step in and help a player in that type of situation, a player who's competitive and wants to be out there with his team.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.